Alright guys, welcome back to my channel. So today I want to talk about the benchdogs.co.uk 450mm triangle, which could be used for layout. It could also be used for cabinet construction or carcass building. It's also excellent as a protractor. And finally, you could also use it as a narrow cut guide. So I'm going to display a little bit of that now. This product is made by benchdogs.co.uk. It's a piece of black anodized aluminum. It has markings from looks like 5 degrees all the way up to 45 to the center, and then 40, 30, 22.5, 20 all the way down to 45 or down to 5 on the other side. On the actual triangle on each side, you have numbers marked in white from 1 all the way up to 42 millimeters, and then out to the tip would be your 45. So you have those numbers going from my right to my left, and then also from the bottom of the triangle going all the way up. You have 20 millimeter holes that are 96 on center. That this layout fits a standard MFT table that has the 96 on center holes, so that you can utilize the T-dogs that actually come with the device as well. So I have this 175mm square from benchdogs.co.uk on the table as well, so you can see that it shares obviously a similar design language. It's got the same black anodized aluminum look with the white etching. On the 175mm square, you've got these registration pins that you can take out and that store on the device to be able to get different functionality. I actually have a video about that. You can check that out on my channel. This triangle has similar functionality. So just going over what the triangle comes with. It comes with, you get the actual triangle itself. You also get 2 of these thumb screws. You get 2 alignment pins here, and then you get the 2 T-dogs, and you get what they call an aluminum extrusion side cheek. That's this anodized green color. It also has the benchdogs.co.uk name on there. So the way that you would actually use the side cheek, let's go over that really quickly. I can take this and I can connect it. So there are threaded holes. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4 on this side, 1, 2, 3, 4 on that side, and then you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on the long side. You can connect this to any of the sides, so just note that. You could also order a second one of these cheeks to add added functionality to this triangle. So I'm going to go ahead and throw this on. This is a toolless design, so everything that I'm going to be able to do with it today, I'm not going to require any extra tools. Everything's just thumb screws and screwing by hand. So when I put this cheek on there, one of the first things I'm able to do is I'm able to stand the triangle up. So it stands up on its own, and as I said, if I was going to do some kind of cabinet construction, let's say if this was the base of my cabinet, and I wanted to grab another piece of wood and make it 90 degrees to that, I can utilize the triangle to kind of square that up. And if you look here at the lip on the actual triangle here, if you had a second one on your workpiece, what you could do is, if you were working on the edge, you could actually clamp down to get your reference on the bottom piece of work. But then if you had a second one of these, you could affix it to this side, and when you would put your board up like this, you could actually clamp as well here, ensuring that you had a 90-degree connection when you go to screw in your work pieces. So that's a nice added functionality that's built into this triangle. Now mind you, you would have to have, you want it to be a 450 tall basically, because if you got something smaller, you may, have a little bit of a problem. But regardless, this is excellent for being able to put carcasses together. Now another functionality with the actual with the cheek in place, when I butt it up against my workpiece like here. Now, so right here is going to be my 0 degree angle, or from this fence or from this face is going to be 90. Now, if I wanted to get, so this is 0, if I wanted to get a 5 degree angle, I would simply pull the triangle down to the 5 degree mark, line that up, and then when I draw my line along here, that would actually give me my 90 degree angle. Likewise, if I go to 10, 20, 30, and even let's say 45, my 45 degree angles along this way, using this corner as a pivot point. Now obviously I've got my 45 right out the box this way. I've got my 0 degree or 90 degree cut cross right there across that direction. So there are 2 quick things that you could do with the side cheek as far as referencing and pivoting. Now another thing that you could do, if you add one of the alignment dogs, you could actually put that in at the 45 degree mark, and there are other numbers that are referenced here. Now as far as the exact functionality of this is, I won't, I'm not 100% sure, because the number markings are, so if it's 10 degree here, you got 11, 12, and then right here at 13, you've got a threaded insert. And then if you go 22.5 or whatever, let's say 30 and go back, you got 29, around 28. And so you've got these, weird marks at where they actually put the holes on the long side. So I'm not 100% sure about that. Now, let me just show you the 45 really quickly. So basically, if I reference off of this corner and I butt that up, so theoretically that's a 45 degree angle. Now that may not be because of the circumference of this pin, and this pin is right in the center of the 45 degree mark. So that would introduce a little bit of deviation either before or after. So I'm not 100% sure if that would be 100% 45, but just kind of showing you the reference that you can use this pin to kind of reference. You'll be referencing 2 points down here at the pivot point, and then also here on the pin itself. Now, another thing that you can do with the triangle, let me go ahead and remove the cheek for now. So the cheek gives it the ability to stand up, it gives you a pivot point, and it also helps with construction of carcasses and such. So now I can actually take these pins and put them on at the bottom of the rail here, or the bottom of the triangle, or square, whatever you would like to call it. And what this is going to do is give me a similar functionality as the actual cheek. I can butt up against my work, and I've got a good reference to get my 90 degree, and I can also get my 45 degree angle right off the bat from this configuration. Now, you could still do the pivot, so if this is my 0, coming down here would be my 45, this would be my 10, 20, referencing here. And honestly, I think because of the actual pin being this far in, I don't think these are going to be accurate numbers. I think you really want to use the pivot point from here. And but basically, if you wanted to kind of, leverage the triangle in a different angle, I could remove the pin from here and put it over on this other portion. And I could butt the triangle up like this if that was something that I wanted to do. Or I could even take this pin out, plug it in here, and butt the triangle up, and then I've got, dual points or whatever. So there's a lot of different functionality that you can get out of this triangle. You kind of mix it however you want. I'm sure there are other people on YouTube that also can show you some other ways that you could utilize the pins or the alignment pins along with this system. Now, another thing, one thing that it didn't show, and I'll go back to the original, to the cheek. if you own an MFT table or a top similar to this one here, oftentimes they can come out of alignment. And that would be, you know, you've got ways to get your table out of alignment would happen here at this point, back here at this point, you know, maybe something in relationship to the rail. What you could do is you throw the cheek on. And then you can also use these pins in conjunction if you wanted to. Actually, I'm gonna put these on the opposite. Let's see, what side do I wanna put these? Maybe this is okay. I'm trying something out here, trying to see if this will work. Okay, so what I could do, actually I don't need the pin for the back side, but I could butt this up here like this, and because the cheek is actually, so the triangle's 90 degree at this point, I could use this to check the square of my table. So if it was out of square, I can loosen here or loosen over here and make whatever adjustments. And so this would be perfect for being able to square up an MFT table. You could also use it if you wanted to set your jointer bed or fence to 90 degrees, or you could set your router bit to 90 degrees or to a certain height. You could set your table saw fence to 90 degrees or 45 degrees respectively with this particular device. So, you know, that adds in another functionality of being able to align and set tools and bits with that. So now what I want to go into is the narrow cut guide. Now this is a little bit, what is the word I want to say? It's not as straightforward and clear as I have seen on YouTube, and it could be that I don't fully understand the product fully. I'm not a master woodworker or anything like that, but I'll do my best to explain. So first and foremost, getting back to the table and looking at the 40 millimeter or the 20 millimeter holes with 96 millimeter centers. Now, if you take a look here at this part of the rail, you've got Mafell Bosch narrow cut guide right here, and there's a scale on here, and it looks like I see a 9, a 19, so there's 10 between there, 29, 39, 49, all the way up to the numbers that's actually marked. The highest is 129, okay? So you got 129, so I would imagine this is 139. So it's a reverse scale. So the bigger numbers go from 1 to 42, and then this scale is counting back 9, 19, 29, back in the opposite direction. Now on the other side of the scale, you have the Festool Makita narrow cut guide. So what that's indicating is that if you're using a Festool system, a Makita system, you would use the narrow cut guide on this side. If you're using the Bosch or Mafell system, you would use the narrow cut guide on the other side. What narrow cut is basically the rail itself, utilizing this as a measuring tool, not accurately, but from my cut side all the way over is about 18.5 millimeters across. Centimeters, sorry, centimeters. So this is about 18, let me just make sure I got that right. Yeah, about 18.5 centimeters across. So that means if I wanted to cut a strip that was only 10 millimeters, you know, from my stop, if I wanted to use my stop, what I would have to do is raise my rail, and then from my stop and my cut, I would actually have to, let me see, do I have my measuring device around here? So this is not a millimeter tape measure, but I'm just going to use it for reference. So say I wanted to set it 10 millimeters, right? Actually, it does have millimeters on here, so good. So I would unscrew this and I would slide this over to the 10 millimeter portion, which is here from my cut. and then I would tighten that down. So that seems good, right? So I would butt my piece of work up to that. Well, let's look at the problem. The problem is my rail doesn't go down. So what the narrow cut guide does is it gives me the ability, let me loosen this and slide this all the way down. I could actually butt this up to my rail and put it right there at my 0 mark. So that's my 0 mark on here. Now the reason why I say this is kind of different, because I've actually used this with my benchdogs.co.uk fence as well, and I'll put some footage of that here in the video so that you can see that. But just using it with this Festool MFT, when I drop my rail, and basically I want to make sure that these are lined up, right? And actually this is very close. I mean, you got a little bit of parallax error here, but this is very close to 18.5 millimeter using this setup. It probably about a millimeter off, give or take, but let's say this is 0. So if I slide this over just a hair and make that 18.5, all right, so that's my 0 mark, right? So right here I'm at 18, and if I wanted to get a piece of stock that was 10 millimeter, I would want to move this 18.5 over 10 millimeters. So from the edge of this rail, if I measured over 10 millimeters, and let's say I take this stop and bring it over to the 10 millimeter mark, which is here, right? Let's say it's right there. Now I can't put my stop all the way down because the rail is, or the triangle is here. But what I'm able to do is just kind of line that up basically with 10, which is here. And then I would tighten that down, right? So now I know where 10 millimeter is based upon this reference. So now I want to take this 18.5, keep that in my mind, and I want to slide that 18.5 over to here, to that mark, and being careful of parallax error. And when I lift the rail, what should happen is if I measure from here to here, I'm at 10 millimeters, right? So that's how the narrow cut guide works. So I was having a little bit of challenge when I was using it with the benchdogs.co.uk, because the benchdogs.co.uk fence comes with a metric measurements here, and right here it starts at 21, and so the off number would be 20. That's not printed, so the first number that you could print or that's printed is right here. And what I was doing was I would set the fence on the table, and I was lining up the 21 from here with the 21 on the triangle itself, right? So let me see if I can try to mock that up here. So if I wanted this to be my 0 cut line here, and I want to line my 21 up on the triangle, what that would make me have to do, so if this is 0 cut, I would have to loosen these knobs on the back of my fence. We'll turn these sideways, and I would have to slide my fence and put that 21 in line with the other 21. Let's say that's right there. Let's just give or take to say that's right. All right, but that means I need to come over with my fence to here. All right, and then I would lock that in, right? This is not perfect science, but I'm just kind of giving you an idea of how this works. So then when I put this here, and so this is my 0 cut. Now when I pull the fence down, let's see what it looks like here. And yeah, it's very similar. Okay, so basically what I'm seeing here is the same thing. It looks like it's about a millimeter or 2 off based upon here. And this is me using the centimeter scale and not the narrow cut guide, which is here. So let me just eyeball the narrow cut guide and see what happens. So if I slide this over to the 10 and I put 10 here, so now I'm at the 10 on the narrow cut guide. Let's see what that actually shows. So that when I slide the 10 over to the edge of the rail, that's giving me very close to what is that, 2.5 centimeters, give or take. So in order for me to actually get 10, I would have to bring the narrow cut. Let me slide that over to 10. Right there. Okay, so that would actually make me have to put so 10 basically puts the edge of the fence where I have it set at about 84-ish. So on this narrow cut scale, so at 84-ish, that's giving me about 10 millimeters, roughly, and a little bit more I need to go over, right about there. So actually it's about 85, let's say 85. So 85 gives me that same 10 millimeter cut. So as I'm playing with this, what I'm seeing with this is that I'm not sure how the narrow cut part works. I see the numbers, I understand the numbers, but when I use the other scale, it seemed like it worked a little bit better for me, where basically when I'm using the bench dog's fence, I just line up the actual numbers of the triangle itself with the numbers on the fence and then line those up. The problem is you may have some parallax error with that, but if all your pieces come out the same size, then you're fine. But I think that that's a pretty decent way of doing it. The other thing that I was thinking about doing is if you had like some aluminum or metal pieces that were cut to certain lengths, say you always wanted 10 millimeter, always wanted 20, if you had some blocks that you could kind of stick between your cut line and this to set it all the time at a certain distance, that would be actually a good idea. Otherwise, say I set a cut at 10 millimeters and then I came back to set it again, it may not fall right where I would like it. Now, it appears to me that the way that this triangle is designed is for being right up against the back of the rail. So if I'm right at the back of the rail and this is 0, when I push it all the way up to my cut line is what I mean, sorry. When I push it all the way up to my cut line, it is correlating with the width of the rail of 18 millimeters. So that is how everything lines up. And as you see, there's a gap here in between my fence and this here. And I guess that's what was kind of confusing me, is because, if I line up here, so when this is at 21 and the fence is at 21, that gives me the ability, if I want 10 millimeters, I move the 21 number on the triangle up to the 31 number on the fence, and that's 10 millimeters, right? Centimeters, sorry, I'm going millimeters, 10 centimeters, that would be 10 centimeters. So if I wanted 10 centimeters, I would move the 21 on the triangle to the 31 on the fence, and that would give me 10 centimeters, and then I would make my cut. Now, the way that I would fasten that down, so something that I want to point out, if you notice, there's no holes. Even though this is a 20 millimeter, 96 millimeter on center triangle, when I have it just like this, I'm gonna need a clamp similar to this, and I'm gonna put it down into my table. And if I have like multiple repeatable cuts, let me actually move this over to the 10 millimeter mark. So I'm gonna move the 21 to 31. Mind you, there's gonna be a little bit of parallax error here. So 21 to 31, right? And then with it in that position, I drop in my clamp, here, and I lock it in. So now I'm set. I can make my 10 centimeter pieces over and over and over again with this setup. Now, a couple things I want to touch on before I stop. Now, one thing is, as far as the triangle, when you move it down and you line it up with the holes, you can use the dogs, drop the dogs in, and you can use this as a reference to make your cuts if you need to. But if you listen to that and watch the triangle, there's a little bit of play. So when I tried to work like this, I actually got a variation of my pieces. I cut a bunch of pieces. I set this to what I thought was 10 millimeters or 10 centimeters. And after I cut all the pieces out and I compared them, they were all different. And that's because as you push and reference, it goes back and forth. And as you notice, you're not touching the fence. When you have 96 on center holes, there's no way for the fence to touch the triangle and it also to be in the dog holes as well. So when you're up against the fence, you're going to need to use a clamp to clamp it down. And when you're using dogs like this, I still would use a clamp to clamp it down, because you don't want this variation in your work. You don't want that movement. So you stick a piece of wood under there and it'll cock one way or the other. You don't want that. Other things that you can utilize with this system that I think are very helpful, you've got speed knobs like this. They will screw in on the bottom here because the fence itself has a little bit of play. Now you don't have that issue with the Festool fence built into the table, but this right here, you've got play. So I recommend, if you want to get accurate cuts, I recommend using a clamp and also using the speed knobs underneath on the bottom here. As you can see, they screw in underneath the table, and I have the washer so it doesn't push all the way through to fasten the fence to the table. Finally, what I want to add in, well, not finally, there's one more point after this, the under rail. You can buy this from benchdogs.co.uk. It actually slides in on the end, and what it's meant to do when it's tightened is it gives your work a place to butt up to when it's underneath the rail. For smaller pieces, it'll have a piece of reference. What I found trying to use that in conjunction with the triangle is there can be some variation in play in this. I had left mine in place the whole time since I bought it originally, and I would take the fence off and move it or whatever. There's a chance that this could actually get bent or skewed to the point to where when you actually take your triangle, and even if you put it up against here, you're introducing some degree of error in your work. So I had to actually remove this from my rail in order to get that nice 90-degree cut. So I don't recommend using the under rail. If you need support on the off side of the cut, I recommend getting the second Bench Dogs fence, which is what I'm going to get, to go on the other side of the actual rail so that you have reference on both sides. I recommend that as opposed to using the under rail. The under rail could work in certain instances. However, I think the under rail is probably a better alternative if you're not going to be taking your fence off and putting it back on, because all you have, I mean, this is aluminum and you've got this bar in here and you tighten it up, but it's subject to move. It's subject to move and to get skewed. And so that's just a little point of that I wanted to point out there. Lastly, so the T-Dogs come with the item. This does not come with it, the speed knobs. So finally, this is another thing that does not come with the actual triangle, but it also can help out. Now, what you could do is you could put these have the compression rings so that it actually can go down in your bench and you could tighten it up and it'll, you know, keep things where you need them to be. So what you could do is, if you had this set to 10 millimeters, right, and you left it, say, just like this, right? Let's imagine this is 10 millimeters. Well, now I can move the triangle away, but since I have these nice and snugged up and they're not moving, I can butt it up and make my cut, right? I could just keep coming back and butting it up and making my cut. You could do that, if precision is not something that you're really interested in, I personally would actually come back and I would put my clamp on here. Because if I'm trying to get something accurate, I want it to be the exact same, and I don't want there to be any play. So I'm putting those speed knobs on my fence, and I'm putting a clamp on here. And the only thing I would use these for is actually as a reference to know that when I slide it to 10, if I'm touching both of these, I know I'm where I need to be. That's all I would use that for. So anyways, I guess that's pretty much everything that I wanted to go over with the benchdogs.co.uk triangle. I hope that you got a clear understanding, at least in the way that I tried to deliver the information. Anyways, thanks for taking time to watch the video, and I will see you in my next one. Take care.